Hey guys, it's Katie Rubin from All the Answers podcast, the podcast you're about to listen to. I wanted to let you know I'm doing an hour of stand-up comedy on June 13th, live on the internet. That's a Saturday night. It'll be at 7 p.m. A real simple, easy way to get tickets to see that is to go to rushtix.com and search for What the Hell is Happening, which is the name of the stand-up comedy show. I hope I'll see you there. Feel free to heckle me in the chat and have a good one. Listen on.
Welcome to that spiritual, actual, factual answers to questions you're asking. You find them inside you, recite you, reciting the records of cash. We laughing, we drafting the passion through vary. It's time for that comedy, dramedy, all of the fanciest, catchiest acronyms. Listeners, listen, we traveling. Consciousness always unraveling. The reading you're having is mapping you back to your natural habitat. Abracadabra, it's magicless, fascinating. To top it off, the host, all the classiest. Now, what were you asking for? All of the answers? What? All the answers.
Okay, I'm all set.
Katie, I wanted to tell you a story which was
Please.
about the bug power.
Okay.
About bug powers. When I worked at Camp Winter Rainbow, I had a camper who had the magic bee power because a bee would fly into the kids all lived in teepees. And if a bee got in there, it would just like circle and circle. And this kid, Clayton, could just go, we'd go, Clayton, and he'd just come into the teepee and he'd just go, bee, please go away. Or go away, bee. And every single time the bee would find the exit, it would be like, oh, sorry, I apologize.
My bad. I hadn't heard from that guy yet.
Right. Oh, I didn't realize this wasn't my spot.
Oh, Clayton is here? I gotta go.
Right. And here comes Jim Brown.
Oh my God, ladies. Oh, there he goes. Bye-bye.
We're just going to shut him down for a little while. We can keep talking or we can let him in.
Jim Brown, ladies and gentlemen.
And there's
Jim
Molly.
Brown. Molly Brown and Jim Brown together, all one unit. Well, welcome aboard, Jim Brown. How are you today?
Pretty well. A little nervous about this.
Oh, nervous. I like nervous. Makes me feel almighty and powerful. Just kidding. I want to acknowledge and say, and out of appreciation, thank you for your email. Jim sent us a little email before we met today, just being like, here's a little context about me and sort of my interests in what you guys do. And it was really cool. You've had such an interesting series of things you've been studying in your life. I'm curious to know, like, how that all started for you.
Well, it is a great complexity of things, but they all circle around my interest in non-ordinary states of consciousness. It's been a lifelong obsession with me, and I actually did research for my doctorate in sort of what are the ways that the mind and body function together, and how does one affect the other, and how do they interact? And I did a pretty satisfying piece of research for my dissertation, measuring brainwave activity and correlating that different patterns of brainwaves to different aspects of consciousness using standardized measurements. There was an inventory called the Phenomena of Consciousness Inventory that I used for that part. And I had, this was about 35 years ago, mind you, and the equipment then was Stone Age compared to what's available now. I had an Apple II computer.
Yes.
I want to interrupt. That was an Apple IIe. Excuse me. Very important.
Yes. All right. So, yeah, you remember it, huh, Cass?
I do.
Yeah.
I don't remember what your conclusions were. I'd love to hear if there were any conclusions.
What I did was formulate kind of a theory about mind-body interaction. And then because of my interest in biofeedback and neurofeedback, I made some predictions based on my theory about how the two would interact. I recruited a small sample of 11 people who were practiced in non-ordinary states. For purposes of my research, I limited those states to meditation and channeling. And so I would have these carefully selected participants do whatever it is that they were practiced in doing while I monitored their brainwaves and recorded them. And then I would administer this inventory afterwards. And it was a pretty complicated inventory, 71 items. And I can give you examples. I've got my dissertation right here.
Oh boy. All right. Jim, real quick, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Okay. When you say introduced, what did you say? Introduced 91 elements? Is that what you said?
There were 71 items on this.
Items. What do you mean by introduced items?
Well, I had, after the subject, the participant was in the state for a few minutes and recording brainwave activity. And it had to be a few minutes because the computer I had had a memory of 64 kilobytes. 64, yeah, that was it. So it was a very short sampling time. And then after they got through with that, I would have them fill out this inventory. And so then I scored that and came up with the different patterns and did a very complex kind of correlational study of how the two patterns interacted with each other. And I found that some of my predictions were accurate. Primarily, I was predicting that there would be very, very balanced brainwave activity in the alpha range between the two hemispheres. And I could only record two sites, the sort of the back of the head, the parietal lobes interhemispherically. And then did the analysis and found out that, yes, there was a tendency toward not only balance, but actually synchronous brainwave activity between the two hemispheres in the alpha range. And I suspect if I were to replicate that now with the equipment that's available, I would find a lot more corroboration of what I predicted in a much more sort of complex pattern.
So the 71 items, those were questions you were asking?
Yeah, I'll give you an example. I've got it bookmarked here, so it won't take me long. So one of the items, it's on a 6-point scale. It's from 7-point scale from 0 to 6. And here's item number 29. My body ended at the boundary between my skin and the world at one extreme of that. And then the other extreme was, I felt my body greatly expanded beyond the boundaries of my skin. Mm-hmm. So it's items like that, just, covering a wide variety of different phenomena of consciousness.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. And when you say non-ordinary states of consciousness, I'm imagining if you had the time and opportunity based on whatever limitations you had at the time, you wouldn't have done just meditation and channeling. What are some of the other types of non-ordinary states you might have included?
Actually, I might not have gone beyond that because my own experience is pretty limited to that.
I see.
Those two forms of non-ordinary states.
Got it. And that reminds me of something else you said in your email you talked about how you had a dream that led you to, like a prophetic dream that led you to...
Oh, yeah.
I have two questions about that. One is, so I want to hear what the dream was, if you're willing to tell us. This is a dream that led Jim to move to the Haight at some point in his life. And two, I'm wondering, were there non-ordinary states, as you're calling them, of consciousness that you experienced that were so affecting for you personally that led you to do, like, what were those that led you to do this work?
So first of all, well, let me answer the second question first, because that's sort of
sure.
Yeah, I had a couple of extraordinary experiences as a very young person. Before Molly and I were married, we were going out together, and I had taken her to Albuquerque from Los Alamos, where we both were living, and put her on a Greyhound bus to go on I think it was like a 7-week expedition with other state winners of an essay contest on the United Nations. And so this was an excursion to visit the United Nations and various other historical sites in between. After putting her on that, watching the Greyhound bus drive away and realizing I was going to be bereft of her company for the next 7 weeks, I drove. It was midnight. It was very late. And I drove to the home of some relatives there in Albuquerque, and by prearrangement, let myself in, went to bed. And sometime during the early morning hours, I woke up and something sort of called to me to get out of bed and go look out the window. And I did. And I was aware that not only did I not know where I was, I didn't know who I was. I had an experience of no self and no time that I had never had before. And it didn't last very long. And when my sense of identity started coming back, I was ecstatic, not knowing who I was. It was the most wonderful feeling I'd ever experienced. Mm. And when my identity started to come back, I felt regret,
Yeah.
So that was my first, what I call a peak experience. And then the second one occurred.
Did you see anything when you looked out the window, or were you just standing there?
Just looking out there were trees, there was moonlight.
Okay.
And it was the most extraordinarily beautiful thing I'd ever seen.
Huh. Wow.
So it's, I should give myself that PCI, that phenomenal consciousness inventory based on that experience. It never occurred to me. I had a similar, but much more sort of cosmically expanded experience of no self. Several years later, after we were married, I moved to Berkeley and had a little house up in the Berkeley Hills, looking out over the Golden Gate Bridge, and had the opportunity to drop acid one night.
Yeah, now you're talking.
Yeah, so with Molly and the friend who had obtained the LSD for me.
You mean your drug dealer?
A drug dealer, who was also an extremely good friend.
I'm just kidding.
The two of them were my companions for the entire. I dropped the tab like just before sunset and watched. And as the trip came on, I was standing on our deck looking out across the bay through the Golden Gate as the sun went down right between the towers, and with Ravi Shankar Raga playing in the background on our reel-to-reel tape recorder.
Yes, the 60s or 70s.
You were hitting all the markers. It's like I was in the Berkeley Hills dropping acid. Ravi Shankar was playing. My wife had hair down to her ass.
Yeah, tie-dye shirts.
No.
Sandals, though, for sure.
I was still a New Mexico boy at heart, even though we had lived in the Haight prior to this experience. Anyway, so at some point during that evening raga, I just went out to the expanses of the universe. I was totally absorbed in everything that is, and had no sense of separateness from any of that, and it was magnificent. And that was the peak of that journey. I had some really nice experiences after that, but that was really the summit experience of that journey. So those two experiences kind of put me in the mood to want to find out more about how do I get there, under ordinary circumstances.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And then at some point you had this dream.
Oh yeah. This was before we moved from Albuquerque to the Bay Area, to San Francisco particularly. I was very interested in beat literature, Kerouac and all of it, Ginsberg, and Cass knows all of this stuff about me. I've got a
my namesake being Neil Cassidy of the Beat Generation. That's who I was named after.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, thanks for reminding me of that. That's how Cassidy got his name. So I was about to graduate from the University of New Mexico with my degree in psychology, and I had been reading on the road and some of the others, and some stories and poems, and a lot of them centered in San Francisco. And I had a dream one night, a very clear dream of standing at an intersection in the Twin Peaks area, looking out eastward toward the bay and looking out across what I later found out was the Noe Valley and then at the bay, and just an extraordinary dream. And somehow it made me just crave to move there after I graduated. Molly was still in progress at the university. So we did. We moved there and went right to the Haight. This was before the heyday of the Haight-Ashbury. But and when we moved there, it was just like a really cool, just multicultural neighborhood that really suited us. Well, I started attending the San Francisco State, working toward a master's in psychology. And shortly after we had moved there, a friend of ours from New Mexico kind of followed in our wake and got an apartment on 17th Street or somewhere in that vicinity, and Stanyan. And when we went to visit him at that apartment, when we came to that intersection of 17th and Stanyan, I looked out over the bay, and it was that scene from my dream.
I have had that exact experience.
Yeah.
I know just what you're talking about. You see it in a dream, and then you wind up in the middle of it in life.
Right.
I hear you. That's amazing. Did you, when you stood at that street corner, did you have a feeling of, I must be in the right place, or did you have a different feeling?
No, it was that, exactly in the right place. I was obviously blown away by having my dream be right there in front of me in reality.
It's pretty incredible.
There was never any question that we'd made the right move. I mean, we were off and running.
That makes total sense. Now, I'm inclined, for whatever reason, to ask you if you've had any alien encounters.
No, I haven't. I've been on the lookout for UFOs all these years. Never have seen one.
Can I tell you a story, Jim?
Please do.
Okay, I don't know why your particular energy field and this particular conversation is bringing this up, but your stories make me think of a story a friend of mine has. It's actually two stories that I'm going to tell you briefly here. We're going to call my friend Jason. That's not his name. But just in case he doesn't want these stories told publicly associated with his name, we'll call him Jason. And actually, as you were just talking just now, I was multitasking. I texted him and said, hey, will you come on the podcast? Because I can't believe I forgot to already, I can't believe I haven't asked him already, given the nature of what this podcast is. My point being, I'm excited too to open your records, Jim, because I have a feeling we're going to see some cool stuff, because there are certain people who have certain frequencies and vibrations, like when I run into them, where there's alien activity around and popular and present. And I'm very familiar with that particular, kind of, it has a feel to it to me. And yeah, I have no idea what I've drawn no conclusions about it, but the energy's present, and this desire to tell you this alien story is really present. So I'll tell you the story, and then we'll just see what happens. Okay.
All right.
Also, the fact that you're from New Mexico and you're an Albuquerque guy, I mean, New Mexico is no small potatoes in the woo-woo realm either. Come on.
Or the alien realm, frankly.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Roswell, and there's been sightings.
Everywhere, all over. Exactly. My dad currently lives in Albuquerque, so I get to get out there kind of on a regular basis, and I love it out there. Vibration is pretty great. Okay, here's the story. There's two stories I want to tell you briefly. I'm hearing a background noise. I'm hoping it's okay. No, you're good, Cass? You don't hear it?
I don't hear it.
It went away. Okay. So the first story is, and a tiny bit of context. My buddy Jason, whose name is not Jason, is a filmmaker and lives in Los Angeles. He and I met up for coffee one day at a Starbucks in the Valley in Studio City. And I say that because the context, him telling me these stories, it was such an ordinary moment. We're at a Starbucks, we're in the Valley, it's not a sexy part of town. Like, it's just such a normal moment. And we're sitting there and I'm telling him some of my crazy woo-woo stuff that was happening, because there's always crazy woo-woo stuff happening in my life. And he's somebody who's super open-minded, and he's an Aquarius, and Aquarians tend to be pretty like into the paranormal and into the other dimensions and into all kinds of stuff. So I feel safe with him, and I'm telling him these stories. And he says, well, that's interesting. I have a story I could tell you. And he lowers his voice, and he starts to like look around to make sure that nobody's too close to him. And I'm like, I'm very excited now, Jason. Go ahead and say more. And he leans in and he sort of like half whispers this whole story to me. And he's like, I don't really tell this story because it's so crazy that people fully write me off. Once they've heard it, they think I'm insane. They think I'm making shit up. They don't know what to do. So now, of course, I'm salivating and like can't wait to hear what the story is. So the first story is he's living in a cottage, like an in-law unit behind somebody's house in Los Angeles. It's a normal day of the week. He goes to sleep. In the middle of the night, a very bright light comes in through his living room cottage windows through the slats of, he had like the slat kind of, what are they called? Shutter type things. Blinds, yeah. Light streaming. He said it was like bright like the sun in the middle of the night, 3-4 o'clock in the morning. So bright that it wakes him up. The building is shaking. His little cottage. Shaking building, sunlight, 3 in the morning. He goes to the window, opens the slat, and it's so blindingly bright he can't see. He is compelled, past his own ability to reason, to walk outside into the yard toward this bright light. He walks into the yard. By the way, I hope I'm telling some of this wrong, because when we have him on the show, he can be like, no, actually, that will be a fun moment. Anyway, This is how I remember the story. So he comes into the yard to the bright light, passes out, goes totally unconscious, wakes back up the next morning, asleep in his bed, as if nothing fucking happened. Okay. Later that day, or maybe it's the next day, he notices that in the back of his neck, I know this sounds like it's out of a fucking TV movie of the week, but I'm just telling you what a guy at a Starbucks in the fucking valley told me, okay? Who's a friend of mine who has like no reason to lie to me, super down to earth guy. Anyway, he feels on the back of his neck and there's like, it's like itching him. He's like, what is this itch in the back of my neck? He feels and there's like a little perfect square shape right under his skin. And it feels very firm. And he's like, what the fuck is this? Like a perfect square, not like a bump, not like anything organic. It feels like it has sharp edges. Okay. He lives with this for a couple days. Now he's freaking out. He goes to the doctor. The doctor comes in the room, feels his neck. And he's like, what is that? Did you have something implanted under your skin? And he's going, no, man, I'm telling you, I went to sleep. There was a bright light. I went outside. I came back in. The thing is here. What is it? The doctor like calls in a couple other doctors. Now there's like a team of doctors standing around my buddy. Oh God, I almost said his name. Jason. And they're feeling the back of his neck and they're all like mumbling to each other. Humana. Nobody has any idea what's going on. So they decide, okay, we're going to schedule a little surgery. We want you to come back in a week. We're going to, come back on some day. They set a date that he's going to come back and have the surgery. Everybody's making notes. There's nurses in the room. They're writing stuff down. His first and last name, the size of the thing. They've measured it. They felt it. They're all like, tink, 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 poking at it. They like put a magnet near it. They're like, it's freaking metal. It's metal. How is there a metal thing? And he's like, I'm asking you how there's a metal thing. He goes away. Time goes by. And there's time between then and when he's supposed to have the surgery. Cut to a few days before the surgery. Goes to sleep, dead of night, sunlight again through the frickin' window, bright as the sun, wakes him up, building shaking. This time he stays in the bed. He's like, I'm not fucking going out there. And he said he was like shivering, scared, passes out, wakes up in the morning, no more square in the back of his neck. Square's gone. No itch, nothing. Like it's never been there. No incision mark. Nothing. He goes back to the doctor's office on the date of the surgery because he's so convinced. He's like, I'm losing my mind. I imagined a whole narrative where a light and the thing, and I went to a doctor and they were there and they touched it. So he goes to the doctor mostly just to be like, do you remember me from an appointment we had? So he shows up and everybody's like, oh, hey, Jason, good to see you. You ready for that surgery? And he's like, He gets to the room. The doctor comes in and he's like, well, I have to show you something. And he shows the doctor's neck and the doctor goes, oh, what happened? What happened? And he's like, I don't know what happened, but it's not there. And I came here today so that you could tell me that I was here before because I think I'm losing my mind. The doctor's like, yeah, you were definitely here. Here's my notes about it. Remember all those other doctors were here. And so the doctors concluded right in front of him, you hallucinated the whole thing. You manifested an injury, and it reabsorbed itself into your bloodstream or some shit like that. And my buddy Jason was like, bye. And then he went away. And that's the end of that story. Now, he and I are both just sitting at the Starbucks, and I'm going like, that's the dumbest conclusion I've ever heard. But I understand their need to conclude that.
Pretty far-fetched that he could manifest something like that, right?
Well, a perfect square that when they tested it, it was metallic. And
right.
what about
he coalesced all the iron in his body and he like pulled it from all of the different places and like made a perfect little square of iron. And then
it reabsorbed into his body. What does that mean?
both of those are pretty amazing, super normal, call it super normal, extra normal activities. Either one.
Non-ordinary. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think any of that is reality, but hey, man, it's just as likely as anything else, right? So who knows? So that's one story. So he tells me that story and I'm like hooked for life now. And he's like, well, I've got lots of them, but I won't bore you with all of them. And I'm like, there is 0% of this that is boring to me, sir. And when are you writing your book? And he's more like, I'm not writing any freaking books about this shit because they kill people who write books about this stuff. And that's his point of view. He's like, to this day, not gonna write any books about it. I would love to tell you the other story. Do you have it in you to hear it?
I do.
Okay. I'm going to try to do the shortest version of this that I can. And I can't wait for him to come on and be like, you did everything wrong. It's the wrong story. Everything was wrong. Jason didn't have a relationship with his father growing up. The dad left at some young age of Jason's childhood. Cut to, he goes to college. He graduates college. He becomes like super off the grid guy. Jason himself goes on a traveling around the world kind of thing, goes to India, goes to Thailand, goes to all the places we all go when we're trying to find ourselves, starts to read all kinds of books, starts to read like conspiracy theory books and alien books and all kinds of all the wackadoo stuff you can get your hands on, gets really into it, really fascinated by it. Right around the same time, I can't remember the details of how it comes to pass, but somebody reconnects him with his father. He becomes he's like 30 now. And somebody says like, is this your dad? And they talk and it turns out that's his dad. They agree to meet. And this is the first time they're meeting since he's 4 or 5 or 6 or some young age. So it's kind of a big deal. And he's 30 now. But the dad needs him to come to, I want to say China. It could have been Japan. It could have been some country in the Asian world. Let's go with China because I can't remember. The dad says, I would be happy to meet you, son. You know, this would be a great reunion. Let's do it. But I need you to come to China because I can't leave China. Now, my friend, by the way, is mixed race, half white, half Chinese, Korean, Japanese. I'm a racist. I'm not a racist. I just don't know. I don't know right now. So my buddy gets on a plane. And he described it to me like he had a backpack, like not a lot of stuff. He had his conspiracy theory book that he was reading and like a couple t-shirts and some underwear. And he flies to China. And it turns out his dad, his biological father, who did not raise him, I believe, is some kind of architect for the American government. And the architecture work he does is building underground like air bases, Air Force bases. So my buddy meets his birth father underground in this like cement bunker that is under the ground in China, but it's American because diplomacy. I don't know how things work in the fucking army. Anyway, it's like American soil, but it's Chinese people. I don't understand. They're underground. It's an Air Force base. His dad says, okay, let's go to lunch. We're going to have father-son lunchtime. But before we go, I got to meet these 2 guys real quick. It's like a business thing. So my buddy, Jason, is sitting, he described it like he's sitting on one end of a very long room, like the way I picture it in my mind, which I hope I'm totally wrong. He'll be like, no, Katie, it was a tennis court. And I'll be like, but you said. Anyway, I remember that he said it was like a, what's that called? Like a warehouse, like a cement block underground warehouse, empty. The dad is way at the other end of this warehouse with 2 other men in suits. And they're all wearing corporate suit clothing. And my buddy is way on the other side of this warehouse, reading, by the way, his conspiracy theory book. Okay. At a certain point, the dad sort of waves him over and says, come over here. Like, you got to meet these 2 dudes. And my buddy Jason is holding the book in his hand. He just has his book and has his backpack and walks across this warehouse and he meets the 3 dudes. And the dad is sort of translating, you know, this is my son, Jason. This is whoever. Nice to meet you. And the dudes don't speak English. They speak Chinese, Japanese, or Korean, wherever we are in the world. And one of the dudes says to
Jason.
Will you please buzz that out, Desmond?
He will.
Is he still here? Okay.
Yeah.
Fuck. Jason's dad, they say like, ask him what's that book? What's he reading? And my buddy Jason says, oh, it's this crazy conspiracy theory book. And Thank you, Desmond. And they're sort of translating back and forth, and he can't understand anything the men say. So his dad keeps translating back and forth. And so fucking A, Jason says to his dad, it's this conspiracy theory book the dad translates. And the dudes say something to his dad. The dad says, oh, they want to know, what does it say? And my buddy Jason says, oh man, it's just crazy shit. Like, it's talking about how like there's this race of lizard people and they're like aliens and they really run everything, but they run everything in human form and they wear like human flesh and they live in like, you know, like a different kind of reality that we can't see, but they make all the government choices and we think we're voting, but we're not voting. This like small race of aliens that look like lizards. They're running whatever. He lays out this whole thing to his dad. The dad is laughing and translates this to the men. The men, according to my friend at a Starbucks in Studio City, the men go ashen. Their faces just go white. And they look directly at my friend and they get sort of like just no words, silent. And they look like they feel sad. He's like, the whole room changed. Everybody got quiet and sad. A long time goes by where nobody's talking. And he's just standing there kind of like, what is happening right now? Wide-eyed. He's like, I'm going to go to jail. I said some illegal shit. Like, what's going on? Finally, the men say to Jason's dad one sentence. It's like, "Sibida-bibida-bibida-ba." And Jason's dad turns to him and says, they're sorry you had to find out this way. And then the two men like bow and scurry away. And then my friend says to his dad, what the hell does that mean? And the dad says, I'm afraid I can't get into it. And that's the end of the story.
Yeah.
And he goes on to like build a relationship. They have lunch. They go to like a Sbarro and they have pizza. I made that up. That's totally made up. But they like have a normal guy lunch and then they have a relationship and nothing further is said about any of that. And he says he never saw the two guys in suits again and they just went away and their faces dropped and that was the end of that. But the sentence was, we're so sorry you had to find out this way. And the vibe he was left with was a feeling of like, we are those people. We are wearing the faces. Your dad's aware of this, but he's not one of us. We're going to go away now. And he also said he had the feeling that, like, he knew that he wasn't a threat to them in any way. They didn't feel threatened. They just felt like, oh, man, this kid, all right, we got to go. This is like we're not getting into this with him, but like, you're not wrong. Bye. So that's that story.
Well, I have a follow-up in response to that. One of the participants in my doctoral research, a channeler who was in her 30s at the time, has remained a friend of mine ever since. Well, she had some extraordinary experiences while she was channeling with the electrodes attached to her scalp, which she told me about. So we kept in touch, sort of, but I haven't seen her for like 30 years, more than 30 years. But for the last 2 years, we have been in contact several times a week by phone, a continuing exploration of some of the experiences that she had while she was there in our house in Los Alamos, White Rock. And I found out a lot more about her history over the course of these 2 years. And it includes experiences even more vivid than the ones you just described. As a child, she used to use the word abducted, but as the story developed, it turned out she was more like she was taken as a guest to a craft in space and shown some things that she remembers very vividly to this day. And so she's described these experiences to me. They're not the basis of our explorations, however, they're just sort of like interesting background material. She's been in the process of what some would call an ascension, soul ascension.
Oh, I'm right there with her.
Over those 2 years. And just recently, I mean, like within the past month, it's kind of gone over the crest. She's essentially there.
Where she's
realized her soul's purpose and knows what to do to live it for the remainder of her time. Yeah. She talks about past incarnations and what her existence was prior to incarnating on this planet.
Yeah. Question. Is she looking for friends?
She has friends.
Can Katie be her friend?
I hear you, Katie. And yeah, I've told her about being invited to participate in this podcast. And I said, maybe I'll share it with her once it's all edited and everything, and see if she would like to get in touch and maybe even be a guest if you're interested.
We'll talk to her. I want to interrupt real quick.
Yeah.
You know, Katie, you were talking about the background noise you were hearing.
Yeah.
I'm hearing it too. And what's freaking me out is it literally sounds like a reptilian snore.
It does. It sounds like somebody breathing, but through a metal tube.
Yeah. Is there someone else on the line that we don't know about? It's not Desmond. He's muted.
I get a yes on that, by the way.
Oh, so there is someone else there.
Do you hear it?
Yeah.
Is that you, Jim?
I don't hear anything.
No, because it's happening while he's talking sometimes.
I know.
It's like Molly's on another line, but she's asleep or something. It does sound like someone is just asleep, but with another microphone. So the yes part of that is, Katie, that we have a visitor. That's cool.
Well, look. I heard it again just there. Did you hear it?
Yeah.
I hear it there. Are you sure it's not just Jim breathing?
No, because it was... Dad, hold your breath. He was holding his breath just now. I thought it was him, but then he was talking and I heard it.
I know, me too. Me too, over and over again. I saw you mute. I was like, he's muting to see if it's him.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to open the records in a minute and see what the hell's happening because, frankly, as soon as you started talking, Jim, I was like, oh, today's Alien Day here on the podcast.
That's interesting.
And that's why, there it is again. When you are saying stories, Jim, I was 100% waiting for you to be like, and then I met the aliens. But you didn't. Now, here's another thing I want to say. Okay, just to give people context from my personal point of view about all the alien stuff. I don't think I've even talked to you about this, Cass, ever before. But aliens are so normal to me that even the way we tell these stories, like, okay, then he saw a thing and it might have been an alien. I tell stories that way because I know people need to hear them that way because people are so not convinced it's a real thing. For me, I don't know. Okay, I'll put it like this. When I first started doing energy work kind of consistently, for whatever reason, and by the way, this is sort of a commonly known thing in like the energetic healing worlds, different energy healers have different, like, just like anyone in any field, specialties. And your specialties usually come from your own challenges or your own, like you're interested in non-normal, whatever you called it, because of your experiences, right? Similarly, in the beginning of when I started to work professionally as an energy worker, every single client who came to me needed alien clearing. I was clearing aliens all the time. All the time. Aliens, aliens, aliens. Now you could ask, how do you know it's aliens? And it's because I ask. And then they say, yes, I'm an alien. There it is again, the sound. Does this guy want to go? Okay, I think we're going to end up clearing this, actually. Whew, I'm starting to get... Wow, that's really loud. I wonder if the listeners can hear that.
We'll know later. Can you hear this, Dad? Are you hearing this hiss? This sort of...
No, I'm not.
It sounds like...
That's just what it sounds like, Jim.
I'm hearing nothing like that.
Huh, that's because it...
I'm glad at least both of us are hearing it, Katie, because that is weird.
That is. You're not hearing it, Jim, because it's merged with you and you're so used to it, you don't hear it anymore.
It's someone who hangs out with you all the time.
So just to finish that story, so surreal.
It's so present.
It's so present.
Desmond, can you hear it? I got to know.
Is Desmond gone? Maybe he died. Desmond, are you there? He's not answering.
Maybe he's peeing.
I'm going to message him real quick. Are you there? We have a question for you. Okay, so just to finish that thought, okay, like 2-3 years, everyone I met, I was clearing entities, demons, and aliens. And I learned, because I worked with so many people, the difference of the vibration between entities, demons, and aliens. They feel different. Now, that being said, there are different kinds of aliens, just like I always tell people, except I don't talk about this a lot, but when this comes up, I'm back. Sorry. Hey, can you come on for a second?
So sorry. I had
You're fine.
I was here. Are you guys talking about the alien breathing?
Yeah. Can you hear it?
Yeah, I was here for that. And then right after you were having that conversation, I had to run out.
So do you hear it?
Yeah. And what I was going to say, like when you guys were talking about before, I almost chimed in, is like, you can't see it if you look directly at it.
As soon as you start listening for it, it goes away.
Like, yeah, like there was a while even before, like when you guys first brought it up, like 30 minutes ago, I was like closing my eyes just to focus on my ears as much as I could. And like, I would think I would hear it. And then, like I said, I would just like really try to focus in on it. And yeah, I cannot, like, it sounds like maybe it's like picking up a signal. For a minute, I thought someone might be picking up like a radio signal. Like every once in a while that'll happen. Like someone in your apartment has a cheap radio and it's like bleeding.
It really just sounds like someone is asleep nearby. Oh, well, Katie will address it.
We're going to clear it. We're going to clear it. Here's what's going to be cool. When we clear it, it'll stop happening and then everybody's mind will really be blown.
And then we'll miss it also.
Oh my God.
This is apropos. Sometimes when I'm talking to my friend that I was just telling you about, something will come on the line. I hear it, but she doesn't.
Okay, that, by the way, is a very common phenomenon that I deal with in my healing business all the time. When specifically I notice it with demons and entities, some of them are meaner than others. And some of them are, I was just going to say this a minute ago, like just like human beings, some of them are just benevolent and lovely, and some are douchebags.
Just like people.
Just like people. And some are evil and some are nice. So it's not all that crazy. Point being, when they know that they're coming to work with me, they know I'm going to clear them out of this person's body, which means they got to find another place to be. And they don't always like that, particularly if they're cranky or ornery ones. So they fuck with the phone line all the time. The call drops 8 different times. There's so much static on the line. We can't hear each other. There's a hissing breathing that we hear that's so distracting we can't stay on topic. I mean, it happens. There it is. I hear it.
Do you mind, Katie? Okay, that blows my theory. Well, the good news is now that I know where it is and
don't cut it out. It's part of the show. Leave it. Yeah, boost it if nothing else. And I want to know that they can hear it. All right, Katie, what were you going to say?
Well, I mean, I actually definitely want to underscore what Cassidy just said, which is like, please don't cut it out of the show because we're going to do something with it in a second.
Okay.
So, I mean, and maybe what we'll find is I can't do anything with it in a second, but either way, I want to find out. And I think it's fun. Even what if it's all just bullshit and it's not anything? Then at least we had a fun time.
Yeah.
But thank you for checking that, Des. I would have been sad if you had found it, but it would have been fine and clarifying. So, all I was saying was that, so for the first bunch of years working, it's actually, to be clear, it was the first bunch of years after my second healing school. In the first bunch of years of doing healing work after my first healing school, I had kinds of other different kind of crazy stories. But after the second healing school, it was like aliens left and right, aliens. And then about 3 years into that, it stopped being aliens all the time. And now, like, sometimes there's an alien, sometimes there's not. Aliens come, they don't come. And it's all a healthy, balanced mix. And what I came to understand was that I was clearing my attachments and energetic frequencies that were in alignment with different alien races that were the ones that, anyway, were keeping me from being a complete sovereign soul unto myself. They were in my space. And so the universe always brings me clients who are mirroring, just like with a normal therapist, you get to see your stuff through the clients all the time. But the fact that it was so distinct, it was like everyone I worked with was like, my knee hurts. And I'd clear an alien and they'd be like, my knee doesn't hurt. Everyone. And then all of a sudden it wasn't that anymore. That's how. And I'm talking about 3 years of time. So I really got to know some of the frequencies of different alien races and different vibrational stuff. And I guess what I want to say is for the light worker people listening, because you guys already know this, like there are races of beings that are higher vibrationally, they are living in states of consciousness that are higher vibration than we spend most of our time in here on Earth. Those guys are light beings who are contributing to the up-leveling of the consciousness of humanity. Then there are all all kinds of other levels of consciousness of quote unquote aliens, which really just means beings that are alive that aren't from Earth and live other places. And it also really just means beings we can't see with our normal vision. But some of us, and there's a lot of us out there now, can see them pretty fucking easily. I have friends that talk about walking through the streets of San Francisco as like walking through the movie Men in Black, where you're just like alien, alien, person, person, alien, because some of us just have that X-ray vision for whatever reason, right? Anyway, so all of that is to say, like, I live in a world where I'm like, I love the stories of it because I understand how not okay or real, not integrated into what we all normally consider reality, aliens are for most people. So that makes it a good story. So the storyteller in me is like, ooh, crazy story. But the healer in me is like, yeah, well, that's a Tuesday. That's just a Tuesday. And it's a weird life. But I do like it because I feel like a real bridge of a person between many worlds. So can we open your records now, Jim?
Yes, let's do it.
Okay, grand. What is your, ouch, I just slammed my finger into a thing. What is your full legal name, the name that shows up on your driver's license, Jim?
James Albert Brown.
Okay, James Albert Brown. It's so funny, also, just on a totally unrelated note, James Albert Brown, to meet you, Jim, because I'm hearing some Cassidy-isms in your speech pattern and way of thinking, and it's really fun to see the genetic, like...
Well, I'm looking at Cass and I'm thinking, neither of us has had those kinds of experiences. As far as I know, Cass, you haven't ever said anything about it.
No, I haven't had any direct contact type of experiences that I am aware of or that I remember. I do think that I am a 50-50 combination of my mother and my father, like almost like slammed down the middle. And I think speech-wise, I think you're right. I'm more like my dad.
Yeah, because the reason I say that is because part of me has always wished that I had the capability to do what you do, Katie. And part of me is really glad that I...
that you don't?
Yeah.
Tell me more about that. What makes you glad about it?
Glad that I don't?
Yeah.
I'm not sure that I would be able to tolerate it very well. I think it would tip me over.
It would tip you over. You mean like, when you say tolerate, you mean like mentally hold the cognitive dissonance of it?
Not only that, but actually repulsed by it.
Oh, interesting.
In some ways, it's like I'm largely comfortable with the world that I perceive. If it were to change that much, it would be a major adjustment for me to make.
That's interesting because you perceive, you allow yourself to perceive far greater breadth and width than your average Joe by far, but as a researcher. And there's that sound again. It has not gone away, just so we are aware.
As a researcher.
Yeah, like you like to observe it and go, good for you to go do that.
It's like I want to scope out the pattern before I commit myself to actually being there, personally.
I am my father's son, okay? Just so you know. He is getting rowdy.
Yeah, here we go. Let's open the records. I also find it very enjoyable, Jason Albert Brown, how close...
You can call him by his actual name. You don't have to substitute Jason.
Bitch. I wrote down Jason too, which I was gonna make a joke that it's so close to Jason Robert Brown, the famous.
We had the wrong book, huh?
The famous what do you call him? Composer
and lyricist. Yeah. No, this is James Brown. Is our I am the son of the Godfather of Soul. Just so we're all aware.
Duh. I mean, duh. Clearly, you are. All right. So, all right, I'm going to talk us through this now, James Albert Brown. So off we go, okay? You ready?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. So we're just going to close our eyes for a few seconds here. Let's take a couple deep breaths into the low belly, breathing all the way down to the seat of the self at the pelvic floor, particularly for you, James. Consciously intending that oxygen flows all the way down to the pelvic floor. Okay. I'm getting that we don't need to do a lot of this intro stuff. I'm just going to go ahead and straight up open your records. We don't have to ground. You're out there on Shasta, right? Are you on Shasta?
Right at the base of the mountain.
Yeah, no fucking shit. I can feel it. All right, so by the power of divine light within us all, come Holy Spirit, Spirit of light, Spirit of truth. For the highest good of all. Throughout time, Amen. Fill our hearts with divine love as I humbly ask permission to open the divine portal to the highest realm of the Akashic records for James Albert Brown. Akashic beings of light, guide James Albert Brown now to the deepest truth of his being, releasing any blocks and restrictions to his abundance and highest good. Lords of the Akashic records, assist James Albert Brown to fully embody his soul's light, to fulfill his soul's purposes, and to heal any accumulated karma. Surround James Albert Brown with the enlightenment and wisdom of his masters, teachers, and loved ones. Clearly direct James Albert Brown's perspective and actions to those that manifest his divine plan. I'm going to go quiet for a moment. Okay. Free of all resistance, judgment, and fear, we're now filled with divine love, and the records for James Albert Brown are now open. So I'm going to just go ahead and dive in with this question, if you don't mind, James, about this breather.
Okay.
Okay, so Lords, Masters, Teachers for James. Allah. What is this breath we're hearing? Can we clear it? Okay. Allah. 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 So we're speaking directly now to that which is breathing in our ears here that we're hearing today. Whoever's hanging out with James. Allah, 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 Allah. So if you are... So truth, who are you? Allah. Truth, who were you before that? Truth, who were you before that? Allah. Truth, who were you before that? 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 Truth, who will you be in the future? Cool. Take all your magnetic imprinting, please, and leave James Albert Brown's body, being, soul, spirit, and our conversation now, doing no harm as you go. Allah, dissipate and release. Dissipate, release. Dissipate and release. Dissipate, release. Everything's lighter. Dissipate and release. Dissipate and release. Dissipate and release. Okay, so that being, are you an entity? Are you demon? Are you alien? Yes. Okay. Are you gone? No. Okay. So what's it going to take? Okay. So are you contributing positively? No. Okay. That's clear. All right. Can you just go? Okay, James, breathe please into your second chakra. You're familiar with the chakras?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, just feel into that area. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, ashhadu anna Muhammad abduhu wa rasulullah. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, ashhadu anna Muhammad abduhu wa rasulullah. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, ashhadu anna Muhammad abduhu wa rasulullah. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, Allah, ashhadu anna Muhammad abduhu wa rasulullah. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, ashhadu anna Muhammad abduhu wa rasulullah. Astaghfirullah al-azim, astaghfirullah al-azim, astaghfirullah al-azim. Astaghfirullah al-azim, astaghfirullah al-azim, astaghfirullah al-azim. So, all right, James. God, that's so... If you can feel now into the third chakra area along the back of the third chakra toward the spine, and then kind of have the idea of being in touch with that in addition to your entire spinal column from the third chakra up through the top of your head, like up through the top of the spine and then out the head. Just be with that. All right. Okay. So now I'm just trying to listen now too to see if we're hearing it still, Cass.
This has never happened before.
I also can't tell if that's now if I'm just hearing you guys breathe.
For what it's worth, it sounds emptier to me.
Can you talk, Cassidy?
Yeah.
Keep talking.
I just want to say that this is an extraordinary experience. I have never been in the presence this clearly of something that I am aware of, and it's fascinating. And I hear an emptiness now, but I don't know if that means that it's... Yeah, it comes in and out now just at the edges of our talk. Like it's actually, now there's remnants that are just connected to our actual microphones, but not. It was so clear and consistent, like a breath drawing through the middle of our sound, which is very different. Yeah. That was freaky and intense.
Okay, now thank you for that. Now let me just listen in if I may. So I'll just listen to the James's. I can't get your name to lock into my head, which is interesting too. There's oftentimes something about that, which we can talk about that in a second. So for Jim, Lords, Masters, and Teachers of the Akashic Records for James Albert Brown. Did we clear that guy? Yes. Okay. Did you want to share any info for him? Yes. We're also aware that you have questions, Jim. Would you like to start with those, or would you like to start with what we witnessed through that clearing process just now?
Let's start with the second.
Okay, so the first thing is a part of why you're at Mount Shasta, and I recognize you went some time ago. Did you hear that?
I did, but it was less pronounced.
Is that the same being? No. Okay, is there another one? Are there several? No. Is there another one? Okay, is it in James's highest good for us to clear that? Yes. Okay. Let me do this first, James. Thank you for your patience. This can only benefit you, by the way. Okay, whoever this is now that we're hearing breathe. Allah. 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 Shadu an la ilaha illallah. Shadu anna Muhammad abduhu wa rasulullah. You can take off now and leave James's body being soul spirit or whatever you're attached to here between he and Cassidy. Is it between he and Cassidy? No. Is it just with James? Yes. Okay. So whatever that is, whoever you are, whatever you're doing, truth, who are you? Truth, who were you before that? Allah. Allah. Truth, who were you before that? 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 Truth, who we be in the future. Take all your magnetic imprinting, cellular memory, everything you've contributed and taken or done or whatever, imprinting out of James Albert Brown's body, being, soul, spirit now across all time, dimension, space, reality. You can go. What you're doing is not cool, and you need to head on out. All right, so what's it going to take for you to go? Do you need James to say something to you? Do you need to say something to James? Do you need the one we cleared to say something? Do you need to say something to the one we cleared? Yes. What do you need to say to the one we cleared? I recognize I'm having a whole experience over here that I will articulate for you, everyone listening. Okay, I'm just going to say all this. This is a female presence. Like if there's such a thing as masculinity and femininity, we had more of a masculine presence the first time. That one left. There's more of a feminine experience at this time. She followed him around somewhere. She's like, I followed you everywhere. I followed you everywhere. And then there was the phrase, I thank you. I love you. I'm sorry. And then there's this real sweet sadness. There was a lot of defensive energy. Like, I'm not fucking going anywhere. And then when oftentimes, just like people, you have to say like, okay, well, do you need something? Like, do you need to say something? Like, what do you need? And she's going, yeah, I need him to know I followed him around. I'm sorry for all the shit I put him through. I'm so grateful for all the learning we did together that you brought me through. Thank you. I'm sorry. I love you. Okay. Thank you. I'm happy to be a conduit of that information. So are you okay to go now? Okay. Have you already gone? Okay, good. God, Lords, Masters, and Teachers of the records for James Albert Brown. Oh, that's why I couldn't get your name in my head. Okay, I'll explain. Record keepers for James Albert Brown. Are those two beings gone? Yes. Okay. Are we going to run into another? No. Okay. So, anyway, they're gone. That's cool. She had a real feeling to her. So, okay, context. Sometimes people hire me and hire many types of people like myself to come to their house to clear, things. Oh, we hear a ghost in the closet, or we hear a wherever. And something I learned in one of the healing schools was, if you ask a person or an entity or a being or whatever that's hanging around in places that is making your life harder, what they need to say, oftentimes they need to say something or be acknowledged or acknowledge someone else. They just kind of go. And in this case, I'm a little stumped on a couple pieces of this, but once she said that stuff, she was happy to start to let go. So I'm just sitting here wondering, you were here in James's body with him, with this other being. So why weren't you just telling him? And it's like, the answer is because we can't really communicate with each other quite well in this form. And then I'm going, so then why would you want to stay in this form? And they're like, well, we weren't that conscious about it. They were just like trapped and stuck and hovering. Now, did James call this in? No. Did those guys choose to come? But why for James? Why? Because he's a nice guy. He would let us because he was there. Why not? Now, your record keepers, James, are saying, and like your essence or your soul or the way that you're tapped into source is saying, part of us bringing you to Shasta, whenever that was to facilitate the clearing of these two guys, and also the beings, and also the clearing of anything and everything that would keep you from your very, very pure alignment. You have a real capacity for a pure, clean alignment with a kind of simple soul level connection with source. It's not very flashy. It's not very like sexy, flashy God channel. It's more like tapped in. I'm pretty tapped in, pretty grounded about it, pretty tapped in. God's real. I'm real. Love is real. The divine is real. The earth is real. I live by a holy mountain. What's the big deal? That's kind of the energy of it.
If I could nod any bigger right now, my head would fall off. I am nodding so vigorously right now.
What are you nodding about?
What you just said, like that's the description of Jim that I know so well.
Oh, that's nice.
That's all.
Oh, I didn't mean it accusatory. I hope it didn't sound accusatory.
No,
I meant
no, I didn't think it was.
Oh, good.
No, I'm like, yeah, you said it. That's all.
Oh, that's cool.
I'm on the same beam as Cass.
Oh,
that's
cool.
How you perceive yourself?
How I perceive myself.
Yeah. Okay. So I could not remember your name, James, because I was not sitting in the energetic frequency of you yet. I was sitting in the energetic frequency of those two beings who have their own full consciousness, name, history, life. And so I wasn't sitting with you fully. Now I'm sitting with you fully. And so now it just feels like you. And so I just don't feel confused about your name anymore, which is very interesting over here because it's like gone, lifted away.
Were they called Jason?
Like a unit.
Yeah.
Jason.
Jason.
So funny. Okay. So what questions did you have, James?
The question about a little over 80 years ago, I had a very serious incident which led to the mangling of my right hand. And
did you say 80 years?
80 years ago. I was a year and a half old.
Oh, you're 81?
I'm 81, 82 and a half, actually.
You're looking pretty damn good there, Jim.
Well, thank you. Oh, yes.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Jeez.
So I give you a little background sketch. This was at the end of the Great Depression. The Dust Bowl was still on, and I and my parents were living right in the middle of the Dust Bowl in a tiny little town in West Texas. And my dad was scraping a living together with a little bakery and a couple of other jobs that he had. One night, while he was baking bread for the next day, and one night my mother brought me over to the bakery. I never did find out why or what transpired there, but set me down on the floor, and I was toddling and I was exploring, and I went around behind one of the machines. It was a dough mixing drum driven by a motor with a gearbox, and the gearbox had a plate removed from it. Some kind of repair had been done, and I put my hand in there, and the gears took it, and we're pulling it through. My dad heard the thing gear down, and I might have screamed or something. Anyway, he was standing right by the switch, and he immediately got what was happening, and he reached over and flipped off the power switch, and the motor stopped, and the gears sort of backed up a little bit because my hand was in the gears, and it came out, and they picked me up and my mother had run out screaming, and somebody showed up with a car. I guess she, I don't know, can't imagine how that all transpired. Anyway, they got a car and took me 7 miles across on this country dirt road to the county seat of Lamb County, Texas, called Littlefield. And
what is this story? Jesus, Jim.
Yeah. And
oh my God.
It gets better.
It gets better.
It gets weirder.
And weirder, right?
I'm so
anyway,
ready.
So this doctor had started this clinic about a year before this happened. So the clinic had been in existence only for, since I was born. And it just so happened to be there. And he had enough skill to be able to at least save my life. He couldn't save my hand. He tried his best. But so I went through a series of amputations. I can show you. Would you like to
see? You can show the hand.
Sure.
There's the hand.
Uh-huh.
So these fingers here were completely mashed.
Got it.
Had to be amputated. The middle finger is, I don't have any joints or any physical control over it. It's just there. It's a presence. So the only grip I have in this hand is between the thumb and the forefinger. So I've lived with that for 80 and a half years now, or 81 years would be.
That's a Cassidyism right there.
Cassidy
clarify. Will say things like this. He'll be like, I was on my way to the store and I passed by 3rd Street. No, it was 2nd Street. No, actually it was 1.5 Street, but it was next to 2nd Street. So I thought it was 2nd Street, but
it's
it was
important
really
that you know that detail.
1.5 Street. And then that'll go for like 20 minutes. And you're like, did you ever get to the store?
Well, I never have gotten to the store. I've had post-traumatic stress syndrome ever since.
I'm sure.
I'm sure I almost died. I could have died of shock if nothing else. And but I didn't die. But I've carried the burden of this injury ever since. And it's partly a burden because people don't notice that I have this injury, that this handicap. It's literally a handicap, and so I feel like I'm expected to be able to do things that two-handed people can do easily, and I can't. My dad was one of the worst offenders of that. He was an electrician. I became an electrician after the Dust Bowl days, and he got me a job when I was in college as an apprentice electrician, where he worked, which was in Los Alamos. He worked for the contractor that did all the maintenance and construction work for the lab there. And he got me this job and never once realized I couldn't do that work. It took two full hands to do that kind of work. And I couldn't do it.
So what is your question, Jim?
My question is, was there some karmic reason why I had this injury? And if so, I'd like to know about it. And just generally, what's the context of my life in which this injury occurred, and what was the purpose of it?
Okay, thank you. That's great. That's clear. And I don't mean to cut you off. I'm aware of our time. And so I wanted to make sure to get to whatever the question was.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. So record keepers, Jim is asking here, like, was there a karmic element to this hand thing? Yes. Okay. So can you tell us any information about what that was? I'm going to listen just for a few beats here, just to get as much detail as I can. Well, first of all, they'd like me to ask you, would you like to clear all the remaining karmic energy that's with it, Jim?
Oh, yes.
All right. So all of the karma that created the hand injury, that created everything that came with the hand injury, we're asking for that to be lifted now from Jim's body, being, soul, spirit, across all time, dimension, space, and reality. Any and all past life energy that is still present, Allah. We're asking for all that to be brought to present time that was with regard to the hand injury that caused it, that holds it in place, that was anything of the past life, all that brought to present time for Jim now. Allah. It's very interesting, Jim, because there's, sometimes karmic stuff is past life connected and sometimes not, which is sort of hard to explain. Like, how could karma not be? And the only times they're sort of saying all this right now, so I'm learning also. So when it's not, it's because it's this lifetime. If you've racked up any karmic debt this lifetime, that you're like, you got to work off or deal with or process. This one is intimately connected to past life stuff, which is now clear or gone, or you could say you're not carrying it. And my sense is it's from one particular past life, which is also interesting to me because oftentimes people's sort of like big life lessons are from many, many past lives of collateral damage from stuff. But this is like one life, one incident, one thing. And another thing to say for context before we talk about it is that every person, this is a big part of what the record keepers like me to remind people of. Every person you've ever met has past lives, and every person you've ever met has done fucked up shit in them. Almost everybody, except for the rare case of the saint or the whatever's, people who are ready to ascend or whatever. But 99.9% of people you interact with they've murdered, they've killed, they raped, they've pillaged, they stole, thieved, lie, sex with your family, whatever, all kinds of stuff. And so from the spiritual perspective, there is zero judgment on any of this. Okay. And usually, interestingly enough, the way the beings of light like to work with me is that we encourage people not to even trip on or ask about or necessarily even know about the story of what happened, because it will just trap people in a narrative that doesn't serve them. You understand this concept. You've lived a long life, so we're going to go ahead and tell you. There was a lifetime where you intentionally harmed someone in this way. Let me listen, because I don't want to get anything incorrect. Did I get anything incorrect already? No. Okay. So you were a different person and you put somebody else's hand through a thing that really fucking hurt. And as you were doing it, you realized how fucked it was. You realized, like, holy shit, I don't want to be doing this. And you condemned yourself. You beat yourself up. You made yourself bad and wrong. And you said, okay, I'm going to go through this next time to make up for it, which is a very common thing that people do, is they go like, if I'm causing suffering now, I'll have to suffer later, and that'll somehow balance the scales, which is very normal. It's not true. It doesn't have to go like that. Sort of, kind of, except sort of, kind of it does, but not really, which we could talk about if you want to. But anyway, so you incarnated with this one main piece of karma that you were like, all right, well, I'm going to work that off right away. Here's what's really interesting to me about this, okay, is that I'm sitting in your field, right? I'm with this past life, and I'm going to check this out loud. Am I correct in this perception? Yes. You're not carrying a lot of karma, Jim, about a lot of stuff. You're like really clean. you're like ready to go. You're kind of good. You like did your shit, you did your work, you cleared your stuff, and then you're like, all right, I'm gonna work this one thing off. I fucked that guy's hand up. I'm gonna come back. I'm gonna go through that. It's gonna teach me compassion for the little guy. It's gonna be like the last bit of karmic debt about compassion for the little guy, which of course was the piece your dad couldn't get at the time when he was trying to employ you at the wherever he was trying to employ you, is he was like, it was too painful for him to grieve, you know, how much your dad wasn't emotionally as strong as you are in your yin energy, right? You're a person who can go like into your heart and feel your feelings and be sad about stuff and process it and be done. Your dad, not exactly so much. So, or not as much as you. And the time period was so different that like the only, you know, the way men thought about things a lot of times was like, we'll just put him to work and he'll toughen up and he'll be fine. And then none of us have to cry or be sad or grieve about it. So, you know, there was not really like a punitiveness to him doing that to you. We get that you get that also. And that, but we want to emphasize this was the best he could do, was like put him to work and maybe that'll just distract everybody from everything. You know what I'm saying? Okay. And so your lesson from it you got, which is like empathy, compassion, and your karma thing. It's so funny and so weird because from where I sit, you know, you just spiritually, we just clear karma. We just do our spiritual work and then karma goes bye-bye. But this idea that humans have where I got to like balance the scales by suffering again. By the way, this is for the listeners. This is a lot for the listeners because you get this already, is false. It's false. So if you're listening right now and you're like, I did a bad thing and I'm a terrible lady, I should be punished. No, it's not that you should be punished. Guess what? Having done the terrible thing makes you feel terrible, right? So feel terrible and let that change your heart. Let that open your heart. Let that be an energy that pulls you forward on your spiritual path. That's all the quote unquote punishment you need. The punishment is in the doing of the thing. You're already suffering. You don't have to add more, look at me being a terrible person on top of it. Now the breathing is back.
Yeah, I hear it too.
Okay. All right. So we're going to look at that in a second. What the fuck? Okay. Anything else that you'd like to know, Jim, about any of that?
No, I think that answers my question. Is
that helpful in any way?
Yeah, it was.
Okay.
Especially hearing that I'm clean, karmically clean now.
Yeah, man, like really freaking clean, like complete.
Oh, so I think I could kick back. What do you think, Cass?
Yeah, maybe you could do some of that effervescing with Molly.
Yeah.
Hang out with Molly's effervescence in your calm, clear fountain, or whatever. We haven't gotten a metaphor for Jim yet.
I've been feeling for decades that I needed to solve the mind-body problem in psychology, but maybe I had a therapist once who told me that it sounded like every time I came up to bat, I had to hit a home run, and maybe I can.
What is the mind-body problem?
How does something so evidently physical relate to something that's not physical at all? How can they interact?
Do you want the answer?
I want the answer to that.
Well, what do you know, Jim? What is the answer?
Well, I've written a book that I'm shopping around for a publisher for now, in which I elaborate that answer, pretty, in my scholarly way. And basically, we've been looking at it wrong all this time. The question, the problem, so-called mind-body problem, started with the French philosopher Descartes.
I was just going to say Descartes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I just kind of like to be the one that brings that home and, reap some benefit from it.
Well, we have some bad news for you.
Yes.
It's been brought home many times by many people already. And you've read them and you know them. I mean, it's not really bad news. It's just going to feel like bad news for a second. It's Jim is what they say.
Mm.
The answer to what is the solution of the mind-body problem is the spirit. There is no mind-body problem. There is a spirit, and from spirit emanates mind and body. The mind is a separating tool that creates the illusion that things are separate. But when one sits in the heart or in spiritual alignment, one knows instantaneously the truth of all consciousness is oneness. Spirit is oneness, body being soul, spirit, one thing. Mind can only separate. Mind cannot unify. Mind cannot understand unity. Spirit and heart can. So all you're doing is asking through the wrong organ. And for you, it's like when you sit in your heart and you sit in meditation or you sit in alignment, you've experienced oneness. We've given you many peak, as you say, experiences of oneness to show you already had the answer. The answer is everything is one. There is no separation. Separation is a delusion of the mind. Period.
When I put that in my book, who should I cite?
Katie Rubin via the Record Keepers via Katie Rubin.
All right.
Well, it's funny because you should cite Yogananda, you should cite the Dalai Lama, you should cite Eckhart Tolle, you should cite Oprah, you should cite Katie, you should cite anyone who's ever done any spiritual teaching ever. You should cite Dennis Leary, you should cite every fucking buddy.
Dennis Leary, wow.
He did a bunch of acid.
No, that was Dennis Leary's an asshole comedian.
Who's the Dennis guy who did the acid?
The Leary guy, Timothy Leary.
Timothy Leary.
Like, Dennis Leary, like a smoking, like really sarcastic. He probably has said something really deeply philosophical similar too. Who knows?
Well, you are correct that is who I'm referring to. The other guy.
I like the idea though.
Dennis Leary. Satan, the devil, We're sorry to be so flip about it and so like, bro, really? But from where we sit, it's like, it's not a question. It's been answered. It's not a thing. And it's just ironic because particularly for you as someone who is so clean and so has such a nice alignment, it's like if you just sat in your alignment, you'd have the answer to that question. And you do have the answer. It's just your mind. Your mind is thirsty and hungry and it wants to believe it's more important than it is. Like it has to figure shit out. It doesn't. It's already done. So they're like, enjoy the mountain. Just hang out. Just let the fountain of light be what you are. And also, by the way, without these fucking hoo-has in your system, these clowns that were hijacking you, I think you're going to have a pretty different experience of being alive. Well, actually, they're correcting me. It's like you're going to have a different experience of being connected to spirit. So in other words, your sense of connection to spirit will be lighter, easier, more fluid, brighter, and you'll be able to, if you desire to, Jim, if you sit in meditation, and they're telling me to give you I'm going to send you a link to a certain meditation you can do. Is that right? To bring you to this state really easily. When you sit in that alignment, you'll get to experience the oneness we're speaking of quite intimately because you're so connected and it's so easy for you. And Shasta supports it so deeply that like, you'll just tap right in and you'll be like, oh, it's right here. It was right here the whole time. It's very Wizard of Oz. Okay. Anything else?
Are you asking the record keepers?
Sorry, I'm asking you, Jim. Sorry.
Well, there's more to that story that is in a little essay that I sent to Cassidy, and he can share it with you.
I would love, if we have your permission, to actually publish a link to that story in our show notes when we do the...
Sure.
It's a really compelling story, and we can just link...
This is the hand? The hand?
It's the extension of that story. It's even crazier.
It gets very, very strange.
Do you want to tell it? Do you want to just tell it?
Well, it'll take a while.
How long?
Essentially, well, I'll give you the short version, and then you can read the longer version that Cassidy has a copy of. The doctor who treated my hand, he and his wife were murdered a couple of years after that. And
what?
And the murder was never officially solved, and so there's this mystery, this big mystery that's connected with this person who probably saved my life, and then later gave birth to my sister 4 years later. Actually, So his murder happened after she was born. So it was several years later.
And it was a big, like, unsolved mystery.
Wait a minute.
Legendary in that part of town.
Okay, that makes sense. Who gave birth to your sister?
He delivered.
The doctor birthed the child. I see. When you said the doctor gave birth to the sister, I was like, what?
Yes, okay. I did say that.
Okay, so the doctor was the doctor in the got it. And then he was brutally murdered by an unknown somebody?
Yeah, except it seemed to be known to somebody because the Texas Rangers put this another doctor on trial a couple of times. Well, actually, the hitman that the doctor had hired on trial a couple of times, and he was convicted, and the conviction was later overturned twice.
Wait a minute. I'm so sorry. I'm confused because I'm slow, not because of you. There was a hitman.
Yeah, another doctor was jealous of Dr. Hunt.
And Dr. Hunt is the one who dealt with your hand.
Yeah.
So this other doctor who's jealous of your doctor hires a hitman to kill your doctor?
Yeah.
And your doctor gets this guy put in jail?
No, he's murdered.
He's murdered. He and his wife both are murdered.
But you said something about unconvicted twice? Or something?
They solved the case. They busted the guy that most likely did it, put him on trial. He was convicted.
The hitman.
And later on, the conviction was overturned.
Why?
That's not clear. And that happened not once, but twice.
What in the fuck?
And then a couple of years after the second conviction was overturned, the hitman himself was shot. And
I almost legitimately just took my coffee onto my computer.
I knew you'd like the story. You read it.
No, tell me more now.
No, that's it.
He was then murdered.
Yeah, the hitman was murdered.
Do we think it was by the doctor? The bad doctor guy?
Bad doctor, it could have been.
I get a yes, by the way.
The keepers are answering.
I know the historian who's written a book about this whole case, and I will tell her. I'll tell her what you just said.
Please do. Okay, first of all, that's a fucking incredible story. Thank you for telling it. Secondly, did you have questions about that aspect of it that you want to run through the hoo-ha here? Because we're still in the records. You want to ask some stuff?
Yeah.
What do you want to know?
You don't mind?
No, this is fascinating. I didn't realize that there was more like this. I'm ready.
Okay. Now, I've given you the sketch of the story, and I guess my questions are, why was that? It was a gross miscarriage of justice in Texas, West Texas. Why did that happen? Who was behind that?
Behind the turning over?
Well, those are two different questions. And they're saying, why is a useless question? What do you mean, why? Because people are sometimes terrible, is what they're saying. Now, what was the second question? Who was behind it?
Who was behind it?
Behind the murder of your doctor?
That and well, specifically, I'm wondering about the convictions being overturned.
Okay.
How did that happen?
Okay. The convictions being overturned. All right. Hold on. I need my pen for this. The convictions being overturned. What was the name of the hitman? That I can't. Oh, Jim. I'll have to. We could hold this for another. No. Okay, wait. Doctor. What's Dr. Hunt's first name, or Hant, or whatever his name was? Hunt. Roy, I believe. Roy Hunt. Wow, that's almost a joke right there.
That was almost my name, you guys. Remember? You thought about calling me Roy, and now we know why. We know why. I was totally deluded.
Okay, you want to know something trippy about that? Not only does my dad live in New Mexico, your home state, my dad, whose name is Bob, has a running joke. So random. My dad is a funny man. He's a very eccentric gentleman. He's the CEO of like a pulmonary research institute, so he's like an eccentric scientist guy, very into like David Letterman and comedy and all that. He had a joke where he'd be like, in my childhood, whenever he would say, like, I was sitting there thinking, I was talking to myself, and I said to myself, Roy, and then he would just keep going. My whole childhood, I must have heard that 60,000 times. I was sitting on the side of the road and I was thinking to myself, and I said to myself, I said, Roy. And he never explained it. It was just a joke that we all knew. Oh, Dad calls himself Roy, but he doesn't really. He's just being silly. And now here we are talking about Roy Hunt. Okay. So the question you're asking me is, who is behind, or what is the reason the thingies were overturned about the murder, the guy who murdered Roy Hunt? So I'm going to ask a few questions and just try to track this through. So first of all, this hitman, we're talking about this hitman. Okay, Lords, Masters, Teachers of the Records here for Jim. Can you help us with this? Yes. Okay, so the hitman who, did he actually murder Roy Hunt? Yes. Okay, so that guy, why did his convictions get overturned? Was there corruption? Yes. Somebody got paid off. The judge got paid off. Let me just keep asking some questions. The lawyers, nope. The judge was in cahoots with the... So who hired the hitman? The doctor, the other doctor, but some team of people, mafia, something other than the mafia. So the mafia was involved. Was there a mafia then? Yes, there was some kind of mafia. Oh boy. And this doctor was on the payroll. Did they threaten the judge? Okay. Who are we hearing breathing now? Is this the mafia guy? Is this the hitman? Is this someone other than the hitman? Okay, hitman guy, can you get the hell out of here now? What's your name? Please hold. This might be the coolest episode yet.
It's going to be the longest, and I don't care. I'm here for another hour.
I'm going to write that down. Kevin Jason Jennings. Is that literally your name? Okay, first of all, can you go ahead and go? Did you already go? Okay, great. Okay, that's clear. I get confused about who we're talking about. Hitman Kevin. So Hitman, his shit got overturned because the guy who hired him was on the payroll of the mafia. The mafia had him, this is what they say, had his balls in a vice, metaphorically, meaning they owned him. The doctor who hired the hitman. It was actually, the doctor was also under the influence of, I think, drugs. He wasn't right in the mind. He was the private doctor to some high up in some shady ass organization. Is it literally the mafia, or is that like, it was like sort of like it was literally the mafia. So then they all got to the judge. They threatened the judge's kids, plural. They threatened the judge's kids' lives, plural, and his own life, period. So he had to overturn it. Then later, the mafia killed that guy, hitman, Kevin Jason Jennings. That name makes me laugh. It's like such a silly, I don't know.
It's like an improv made up name.
It's so silly. I'm like, that can't be right. We'll see what happens. But anyway, that's what I hear. And the fucking breathing stopped again.
Dad, you are clearly some kind of portal for all these creatures that have been hanging out and possibly bothering you for a really long time.
Yeah, man. Well, interestingly, who is lighter? Is it that Jim is lighter? Roy is lighter. Roy is the doctor. So let me ask that really quick. Was Jim carrying Roy? Oh, wow. You've been carrying Roy and the guy who killed him. Hitman. Yeah, the guy who killed him. And these two aliens. Anybody else?
While we're in there.
This whole time. And when we were asking about the hitman and he kind of like left, I don't remember what happened there. I said something and they went, everything got lighter, but it felt That's why I was just asking, is it Jim who got lighter? But it wasn't. It was Roy who got lighter. Now, I keep having to look. Roy is the doctor. So why would Roy be lighter? Because why would Roy get lighter? I guess it's just like he's carrying the burden of all this too, and he feels guilty and like it's his fault. Yeah, okay. It's all just everybody's guilt and shame and self-blame about it. But when we got the hitman information... Oh, okay. Sorry. I'm sorry, everybody. This one's tricky. So the hitman with the silly name has a very dark energy. He's gone. So when he left, Roy's field got to be clear. Your field got to be clear. Roy took off. Everybody's gone. You're good. Can I please have no more breathing on the fucking line now? Yes.
It was breathing until the second you said that, and it dropped.
Yeah, now I'm just listening. It's only when we talk, right?
Now it's only when we talk. It was happening
all
whenever
the time
before. Yeah. Now it feels like more an actual audio remnant to our microphones hissing.
All right, Jim. Thanks for bringing super weird town to our village. It was weird here before. Now,
and this is Katie saying it was weird. Like Katie, if Katie's saying it's weird, that's hilarious.
Oh my God!
What are you thinking right now? What's going on for you?
We could start a TV series like crime scene investigations. Only it would be psychic detectives.
Oh yeah,
for way cold cases, like
way cold cases. Yeah.
It's got to be over 60 years old.
But you know, the woman who I work with, who does my woo-woo stuff on me at this point, she is called a forensic medium. So she'll say like the body is northwest by this many degrees at this longitude, latitude, and they find the body.
I'm impressed.
She does that. That's one of her things she does. Mm-hmm. Isn't that fucking incredible? When I was moving up here to Benicia, I asked her, I was like, should I move up here? Like, I'm getting that it's in my highest good. What do you get? And she was like, it's northeast, isn't it? I go, yeah. She goes, I'd prefer you northwest, but yeah, northeast is pretty good. Yeah. Oh, there's a lot of spiritual energy. Oh, you're going to be on a hill, right? Yep. At the top of the hill. Oh yeah. Yeah. Go to that hill. You need to do stuff on that hill. And then she told me the longitude and latitude of it, which I looked up later and was like, well, that's amazing.
She's really tuned into geography.
I guess. All right, Jim, any final questions since we've been here for 6 hours? And
I'm pretty astonished. And no more questions.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you for the clearing. My God,
I hope truly from the bottom of my heart, I hope that what we get to hear from you in the future is like stories about how different things are now. Like I'm hope my heart is like, I hope that this produces something tangible to you that you then go, oh my God, I can feel nature more, or I love my wife more deeply, or I feel God in the river, or whatever it is. And that you come back and please tell us of anything that happens. I'd really love to hear about it because, you know, it's so fulfilling on this end to get to hear that stuff. So thank you for being here.
Thank you, Katie.
All right, let me just close your weird ass records because I don't want to walk around with this shit open anymore. I'm totally teasing. I hope that's clear to everybody.
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you, Lords, Masters, Teachers of the Records, for Jim here. I'm asking that you return Jim's energy fully to himself now. And any other people, beings, entities, or aliens, they can all go back to themselves now too. Whoever are involved in any of this, go ahead. I ask that you return us both, all of us listening, to our complete human wholeness now. The divine portal and the Akashic records for James Albert Brown are now closed. Amen. The divine portal and the records for James Albert Brown are now closed. Amen. The divine portal and the Akashic records for James Albert Brown, Allah, are now closed. Amen. 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 Oh my goodness.
Many blessings.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, Dad.
Bye, Cass. Bye, Desmond.
He won't say anything. Oh, he's waving.
He's waving. Thank you, Jim. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
All right.
Let's see if he can hang up. there we go.
Goes. Yeah, that was amazing, Katie.
You know what's trippy for me is like, I'm still getting over this whole thing where this podcast is like bringing very visibly to the world what I do a lot. Like I do this alone in my living room a lot. So it's very different to be like, hey, everyone who cares to listen, here's me listening to Beings of Light about murders from 60 years ago. Like, it's weird. It's fucking weird.
It's weird. But it's a wonderful sort of transparency. Yeah, that's all. There's a transparency to it of like, before you said something about there was background noise and I hadn't heard it yet. And then nothing happened for a while. And I started hearing this fucking breathing. And I was like, looking, Desmond was muted and I knew it wasn't me. And my dad wasn't breathing in the moment that I was hearing it. I was like, it's like, is Katie's dog asleep right next to the microphone? What the hell is going on? And then you started calling it out. And then it came and went and was aggressive sometimes.
Yes.
And I have never, I know you hear this shit all the time, but there was a ghost in the machine is what we had.
You know what's trippy though, Cass, is that even though I do this wacky stuff all the time, I haven't run into hearing an audible breath in the microphone. Like it trips me out when information is given in a way that other people can perceive. Because it's one thing if I'm just perceiving whatever I'm perceiving. I might be a fucking crazy person. Maybe I'm just fucking crazy. And if that's the case, cool. That's just a crazy lady and they have a crazy podcast. The end. But when other people start hearing hisses, that's...
And like you and I, there were so many times we didn't comment on it, but we'd look at each other and go, our eyes would go wide and be like, yeah, that one. And some of them were real clear, like Brett. It wasn't just audio hiss, which I'm getting very used to hearing. It was like,
yeah. Also, that fucking hand story. What the fuck?
I mean, I've lived with that all my life, so I know.
Then the murder? Like
the murder, I didn't know.
You didn't know?
Until he wrote that story down. I'm going to, like you said, he wrote he's an incredible writer. There's a really well written document of his experience around that story, the whole thing, the whole narrative. And we'll put it on, a link to a Google Doc of it or something in the show notes when we publish this episode.
I mean,
because it's incredible.
That I'm so glad I didn't cut him off before he was I was about to be like, okay, thanks, have a good day. And then I was like,
we're going for the 2-hour episode today. It's fine. That's what we're doing.
I would love a good fucking, what lady that you know doesn't love a good true crime story?
I was like, oh, this is right in Katie's pocket right here.
I'm not going to get over that for a while. That was something else.
Hey, those are my parents. They're pretty crazy, wild, wonderful, phenomenal people, right?
Yes.
Now you get it.
I really do. Did you see my text, by the way?
No.
I texted you. Okay, 2 things happened while all that was happening. By the way, this conversation, I'm happy to have it be part of everything. I posted on Facebook while we were doing this conversation something like, holy shit, this episode. What the fuck? Tune in, bitches, because I'm...
You're going to have to wait 3 weeks, but it'll be awesome.
I just couldn't not talk about it. It was just so fucking mind-boggling. Anyway.
Yeah, I got your text. We'll talk about that later.
Sounds good. So, I guess we're done?
I guess so. Yeah, that was pretty wacky. I had one experience when you said, like, clearing karma. Like, it was really straightforward. I'm going to clear the karma now. Here it goes. And I just had the biggest yawn, like came roaring through my body, which is just interesting because I know I'm connected to my father.
100%. I mean, yawns are, in my world, are always the clearing of energy.
Yeah,
always.
I also had a nausea moment at another point when you were doing some work.
Nice.
Mild, but I was like, oh God. Thank you.
No. Well...
I just want to go on record so that when I edit this episode and I can't hear that fucking breathing, that I won't be surprised.
Right. That it's probably not in the audio.
It would not surprise me at all if while editing this episode, I'm like, I can't hear it anymore. It's gone.
Well, let's just get it.
It's not here.
You could hear it.
Absolutely.
Huh.
Yes, I heard it while we were recording. I saw you guys going like this, and I was like acknowledging, like, yeah,
okay,
I heard that
dear
one.
listeners, it's not just that Katie's crazy. It's not just that Katie and Cassidy are crazy. We are in a group delusion, if indeed it is the delusion. Well, let's sign off. Katie, that was awesome.
All right, well, that was the coolest thing that's happened in a while. Thank you both for being a part of it, and have a great day.
Yeah. Bye.
Normal stuff.
You asking for all of the answers? Say what? All of the answers? Yeah, all the answers.
Hey guys, thanks for listening. We'd love to hear from you. Please email us with your questions so that we have questions to answer in the Akashic Records. Our email address is allanswerspod@gmail.com. That's allanswerspod@gmail.com. And if you'd like to find us on Facebook or Twitter, it's @allanswerspod, @allanswerspod. Thank you. What is this now? Update available. Update.
What were you asking for? All of the answers? Say what? All of the answers? Yeah, all the answers.